where you scream to watch that, watch this, and I'll dive down through this hairy flesh.
Hello and welcome to Watch This. I'm CJ Johnson. Would you believe it? January is already coming to an end. How does that happen? I'll tell you, time passes. There are new seasons of all sorts of television along the way. And so Jim Flanagan is going to join me to talk about what was really good last year that's coming back this year. Some of our best television of 2016. Over the last few years, there has been a phenomenon of web series being picked up by various networks, cable channels, streaming services. For my money, the best of these was in 2016 with the web series High Maintenance being picked up for HBO.
Only in Brooklyn can you smoke pot all day with your friends and call it a preschool for adults.
It is available in Australia and many regions of the world. Jim Flanagan also loved it. He joins me. Jim!
Howdy, CJ. How are you?
Happy 2017.
You too.
So, I loved High Maintenance.
Yep.
In fact, High Maintenance might have been my favourite show of 2016. I just
be cool.
loved it. Well,
Yep.
I mean, there was so much good
like it
TV
too.
of
Yep.
2016, but every single episode of High Maintenance, every single one of them, I think there were 8, by the end, I was just like, wow, that was a great episode of television.
Yeah,
they were all different, all unique, all funny, and all original.
Yeah. And look, were you a fan of the original
I haven't seen a
series?
single minute of the original web series. Have you?
I have, yeah, no, and I've waded through all of it, and I'm with you. I really like the HBO series. It's quite a different format to the original structure of the web series, which were much shorter episodes.
Between like 10 and 12 minutes?
Even less, often 5, 6, 7. Very short episodic episodes. So I was really curious when HBO bought the rights to this to see how it would work and how it would translate. Turning that into a 30-minute plus episode is a very different format and piece of writing. But I'm with you. I think it largely works really well.
2 stories in every episode.
Yes.
Sometimes they are tangentially related.
Yep.
Sometimes they're not related at all,
Yep.
except by his character,
Yep.
Ben Sinclair's character, the co-creator and the lead actor,
Yep.
who plays this pot dealer
Yep.
who's a bicycle weed dealer
Yep.
in the 5 boroughs of New York
Yep.
City. And sometimes he is the only link between the 2 stories, or you might see a character from one of the stories simply pass by a character in the other story, and that's it.
Well, yes, and I think also, and he's retained this from the web series. There's always once you become and familiarise yourself with the setup, he may not appear until quite long into the episode. You always know that Ben Sinclair's character is going to make an appearance.
Yeah, and sometimes very incidentally.
Absolutely,
to the stories.
And quite often, possibly more often than not, the entire episodes aren't built around his character either. But look, what I like
and
about...
very importantly for some people to notice, because this put my partner off until she realised that it wasn't the case, it's not about weed.
No.
It's not about drugs.
It's not really about him either.
No, it's not really about him. The concept of a weed dealer is simply to tell stories of the kind of population in Brooklyn that gets weed delivered. In other words, it tells stories about sort of the hipsters, but everyone, much more than just the hipsters. It tells stories about all of New York society because it shows you that they all smoke weed.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like this series, because I think we're so suffocated now in both film and television with depictions of New York and all of its boroughs. I think it's often, there are so many television series and so many films.
Especially about Brooklyn hipsters.
Absolutely, in which Manhattan or Brooklyn or more so than the other boroughs, but the other boroughs as well are this sort of additional character. And it can get really obvious and really boring quite quickly. And I think it's difficult to really create something unique when the market is flooded with obsessive depictions of New York.
Yeah.
This, to me, works because of the unobvious way that he goes about doing that.
Yeah.
And it's not just a depiction, as you say, of white hipsters in Brooklyn or Manhattan. Yeah. And that's exactly right. And there's something in his writing as well that there's nothing obvious in the...
Never.
No, I've never once watched an episode of High Maintenance, either in its web series form or this one, and thought that was exactly what I expected. That's just another obvious,
it's always surprising,
Jewish or hipster or multi-racial depiction of a Manhattan bar. It is always surprising, and he constantly subverts your expectations. And like the pilot with the sort of bodybuilding guy at the beginning.
Yeah.
There's this entire scenario that plays out that's really witty and well written and enjoyable, and then the last minute he sort of of flips it, and
Yeah.
everything you've seen is false, effectively.
And he finds new subcultures that I didn't know existed and brings them to the screen, and they're fascinating. Like, I didn't know about day raves.
Right, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
midweek day raves.
Yes.
And, you know, he puts them on screen and you're like, oh my goodness.
Well, and I think also what I like about this series, and I don't see, this is kind of touched on in lots of other series, but I think he does it better than any other series, is the changing nature of the boroughs of Manhattan, and that Manhattan is overwhelmingly now in the kind of post-Bloomberg, Giuliani world, has become a sort of playground for the rich and famous, and a lot of the middle classes have moved out to Brooklyn and the other boroughs, and I think he captures that transitional nature of New York really, really well, and
Absolutely.
that in all of the parts of the five boroughs that he goes to, there are white middle class people and newly arrived immigrants and everything in between, and he stays very clear, I think, of that kind of idealized depiction of New York that we kind of still spoon-fed every day. Even in good series like Girls, some of which I like, some of which I don't, there's a lot of that. And I think this is one of the better depictions of sort of contemporary New York.
Feels very, very real and very funny.
You want some, I got some, get high and have some fun.
Sometimes you just put on headphones and you're walking around the city. It's like you're in a movie. It's awesome.
A series that returned, albeit funded by a different platform this year, was Black Mirror.
In this world, we're all so caught up in our own heads. It's easy to lose sight of what's real.
Charlie Brooker's British series was picked up by Netflix and given a huge injection of cash. They've either shot 12 or 6 episodes, depending on who you listen to. Regardless, they've dropped 6, which was double the amount that the British incarnation used to make at any one time. And they've sort of mixed it up now. It's half set in America, half set in Britain. The original, or the first 2 series of Black Mirror were all set in Britain. Jim, what did you think of Series 3 of Black Mirror with the new money and the sort of the bigger scope?
Yeah, and look, again, I was really curious to see how this would go. I loved it. This is definitely on my top 5 pieces of TV on the year. I'm a huge Charlie Brooker fan as well,
me too.
and I've watched him from his very, very early TV writing days for the Guardian in the early noughties.
He was like a
Career
barbed
arc.
satirist. Like, he would create these fake TV columns about fake television shows that were essentially just satirising what was out there, just pushing them to the nth degree.
Yeah, it was called Screen Wipe. It was in the Guardian once a week in the UK, and it was the single most brutal piece of critical writing in the UK for years.
And that would all be available still online.
It is,
I'm sure,
and it was really ahead of its time staff. But I thought Black Mirror's Series 1 and 2 was a massive, massive step up.
Me too. So Black Mirror 1 and 2 and Black Mirror 3, they're essentially what ifs or alternative reality versions of technology that is either available now or in the coming couple of years.
Yes.
Like, they're not set 100 years in the future, they're set like in 2019.
Yes, and they're sort of riffs
what
on
goes
existing
wrong.
technology.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So my big thing about season 3 is, because season 3 is undeniably brilliant, I just don't know whether, because season 1 and then season 2, I guess, felt so fresh and vital and alive, whether that gave me a particular high that season 3 can't replicate. In other words, if I saw season 3 first, would I think it was as brilliant as season 1? Because I do not, and I'm wondering whether I would.
I think
just that I know his vibe already.
I think you would, and I agree that there's nothing hugely new in the sort of template for Black Mirror in season 3. It's just done on a slightly bigger stage, on a bigger budget, and I think the writing is better as well.
Do you really?
No, I do, and I think particularly the first episode. I think the first episode.
That's the one about the social media and the likes.
I think the first
with
episode.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Absolutely.
That's really good.
It's the most eloquent, brilliant representation and satire of our obsession with mobile devices and social media I have ever seen.
You're right,
I think
because
it's
at the beginning you're like,
brilliant.
oh, this is obvious, this is shooting fish in the barrel. But by the end of it, you're like, that was clever on every level.
And it's also it was the most difficult to watch piece of television of 2016 for me. I was cringing behind my cushion when I watched the first episode because it's just so painful to watch. And look, to me, Black Mirror Series 3 was the great satirical piece of sci-fi television, in the way that Westworld just wasn't.
Yeah, I gave up on Westworld after 3 eps because it bored me, and I
hung in
had
there
no
longer.
faith that it was going to pick up. Can we just talk about Black Mirror Season 3, Episode 6? I don't know what it's called, but everyone knows it as The Bees, though I don't think it's called The Bees. That was an hour and 40 minutes or something.
It's a film.
It's a film, and it has the budget of a film. That was you could release that in cinemas and get people to pay $22 and they're not satisfied. That was amazing.
Well, and it's a really good sci-fi film as well. And actually it's one of the better sci-fi films of the year. And I actually
terrifying.
think it is. Yeah, it's horrifying. I think all 6 episodes largely work as independent small films anyway.
Oh, definitely.
And that's what he's done, and that's what I like about Series 3. I think that was what Series 1 and 2 was. This is just that on steroids.
So, Black Mirror, watch this.
Singularity is when computers learn to outsmart man like women did years ago.
You are so adorable.
A show that I missed in 2016, but which is on the ABC, which I proudly work for in another capacity, is one of Jim's favourites.
The international community has accused us of violating human rights. But these creatures are not human.
Jim, tell us about Clever Man.
Yeah, so look, Clever Man had a lot of press last year.
Including the best press image of the year.
It's a pretty hot press image. Yeah. And we'll talk about the production design. But yeah, this had a lot of interest. This to me was the best piece of genre television of the year internationally, and it's certainly not just a piece of genre television, but it's essentially this really interesting mashup of all sorts of genre werewolf zombie tropes, really imaginatively intertwined with a lot of classical Indigenous Australian mythology based around the concept of the Clever Man, and I won't go into detail of what that means. It has this fantastic production design done by the company that worked on the Lord of the Rings films and Bangara Dance Company, who do all of the production design of the Harries, and that will be familiar to people who've watched it. I just loved it. It's a little clunky at times, as you'd expect a new piece of television that's referencing classical genres to be. It's a little bit rough around the edges in the writing and some of the performances. It's a really top-notch crew of writers and Australian directors, especially from Indigenous Australia who've worked on this. Leah Purcell is one of the directors of a handful of episodes, and it's just great. And it's what I love about this series is the way that it deals with very serious issues in contemporary Australia and the world about cultural assimilation and race in a very unobvious, undidactic, playful way.
That's fantastic.
And it's still very angry. There's this anger and this energy in Clever Man that I love, without ever seeing pompous or self-important. It's still basically a sort of werewolf genre piece of TV, just staged with a really imaginative touch from there.
Is it set in the present?
It's set slightly in the future, and similar to Black Mirror, in a very recognisable future, again, kind of 2020-ish, that includes a different type of human that are basically covered in more hair than the rest of us, that are Indigenous to Australia.
Right, okay.
So there's this tiered system. Indigenous Australians are also part of contemporary Australia. And so, similar to Black Mirror, they're just tweaking.
So you've got Indigenous Australians, non-Indigenous Australians, and
the Harries.
These Harries.
Yes, you have this tiered system.
And is it that the Harries have always existed, or have they come recently?
No, they have always existed, and there's this huge. There's effectively an apartheid regime that the government is attempting to control and regulate, and there's all sorts of misinformation out there about the Harries and their behaviour, and they're blamed for things that as you'll see in the series, they may or may not be responsible for. So again, riffing all sorts of obvious genre classical narrative tropes. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it really works. And it
sense
had
of humour.
Yeah, absolutely. It is quite violent and quite angry, as I said. But it's staged in such an imaginative, playful way that there's nothing ever heavy-handed, even when it's really dealing with these very clearly serious topical issues in Australia. And to me, it's one of the better, I guess, representations and commentaries on increasingly delicate cultural landscape in Australia.
Fantastic. I missed it. I will check it out. That's Clever
Please do.
Man.
Why should I care what happens to some subbies?
That's your job, clever man.
Time for you to step up.
You're watching Watch This. I'm CJ Johnson. Jim Flanagan and I are looking at the TV series of 2016 that made a big impression on us that are coming back in 2017. I said before that High Maintenance might have been my favourite show of 2016, but I have to say that I think The Girlfriend Experience was actually my favourite TV show of 2016.
Now, I already have a couple of exceptional men in mind, but I have to judge pretty quickly whether I should work with someone. So, what are you comfortable with?
Yeah, I'm fine with all that.
The Girlfriend Experience is inspired by Steven Soderbergh's film of about, 6 or 7 years ago of the same name, which was about a call girl who worked high-end and provided a girlfriend experience, which is not just sex, but, the whole take me out to dinner, I'll be interested in your work and your life girlfriend experience. The TV series does not follow that film setup exactly, but is essentially about how a young woman, played by Riley Keough, a law student, becomes a high-end call girl. There's this whole sort of alternative world of sci-fi sort of filmmakers out there working on very low budgets who are creating kind of like what we talked about with Black Mirror, films set in an alternative present or a slightly different alternative universe with slightly different technology. And this series, while not having any sci-fi elements, shares the aesthetic of those particular movies. It is very cold, very precise, very grim, very austere, and for my money, the most artistically bold television series that I became hooked on over 2016. Riley Keough, I thought, is absolutely brilliant, an incredibly bold performance. I mean, she was going to make it, I feel, anyway, because she's such a good actress and she is also, well, the camera loves her. But with this series, she has so much sex in this series and gets her clothes off so many times that she is saying, like, I am not afraid for my career by doing this as my first big hit out of the gate. I'm willing to do this. And I think that's pretty bold for a very, very young actor.
Yeah. And I think the sex is very matter-of-fact in this
it's
series.
so the whole series is matter-of-fact.
Yeah. I love the way this is shot and edited and scored.
It's shot very Kubrickian. It's very cold and precise, and it is creepy.
It's shot very Carruthian, actually.
Yeah.
I think you can really tell and see his influence on the production.
I think he and Amy Seimetz might be a couple.
I think they either were or are. They've definitely worked together a lot.
Yeah.
I enjoy this. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as you did, I think. I think it's a really interesting mood piece, and especially the first half of the series I really enjoyed. I was a little bit disappointed by some of the more sensationalist plot developments, I must confess, in this.
I didn't think there were any.
Well, just the way that I don't want to go into too many details, but the way that the central character starts to be blackmailed and things to me became a little bit more sensationalized than I was anticipating. The setup is so cold and non-judgmental and believable.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit disappointed with just some of the narrative devices that they used in the second half. Although having said that, the last episode is really
The last episode is unbelievable.
Excellent, and largely forgave those sins. I didn't put this in my top 5 of the year, but I definitely enjoyed it. To me, this is a really interesting first series, and I'm looking forward to seeing a better second series.
It's definitely coming back, though. I don't think till 2018. It's my number 1. High Maintenance is my number 2.
Okay.
In terms of I teach a film studies class, and this was the only television I showed to my film studies class because I feel it is so cinematic. And there's so many amazing cinematic touches. Just for a start, I think it's shot in Toronto, but I think it's set in maybe Chicago.
Yeah, it's definitely not set in Toronto.
Because then at some point she goes to Toronto for a gig. Because she's that high end as a call girl. And it's essentially set in Anywhereville, Northern America, that is a modern high-rise city.
Yes.
And the way it is shot, it almost looks like a science fiction film set in the future because of the way it's shot.
That's true, and there's this very nice, even-handed, generic way that they photograph everything that sort of flattens out all the landscapes. There are very
it's
few,
all very white.
Yes, and there are very few discernible, noticeable icons of the landscape. And it's always suggesting that this is a sort of any city in the world, and this happens everywhere.
And it mostly takes place in rooms above ground.
At night.
Like by above ground, I mean way above ground.
Yes.
Like, so she works in a law firm, interns as a law firm, and those are all high in the sky. And then she's often in very high-end hotels with her clients, and they're all high in the sky. So you rarely ever get a sense of the hoi polloi. It's all set in this literally elevated world.
Yeah, it's distant in every way, this series. And
you calling it a mood piece is very...
Yeah, it is. It's a really beautiful mood piece, I think. I just wanted a little bit more, and I'm really curious to see the next series.
I liked wanting more. To me, it's all about being... So much of it is about being mysterious and leaving you hanging. The Girlfriend Experience with Riley Keough, she will become a big star, trust me.
Did you accept money in exchange for sex?
I'm not answering that question.
I cannot understand why you would do something so stupid. Because I like it.
You're watching CJ Johnson with Jim Flanagan. We're looking back at television of 2016. Now, if you were to go only off the first episode of a series, I would say The Night Of was my favourite series of last year because the first episode blew my mind.
I want to tell you something, and it's the most important thing you'll ever hear in your entire life. Don't talk to anybody anymore. Shut it.
As it panned out, it was still a great series in my top 5. It was an 8-episode limited drama series that actually I hear is getting a second season about a young man played by Riz Ahmed exceptionally well who gets accused of a murder. And it's partly a mystery because we don't know whether or not he did it, and along the way we meet other suspects. So it becomes a traditional mystery. But really, to me, it's a procedural, and not just like Law and Order is a procedural, it is about the minutiae. It is about what happens to you when you get booked, when you are waiting, how the shifts work within a police station. It is about the specifics about the procedure of how you are arrested and go through the criminal justice system in New York City, including, for a hefty period, for our main suspect going to Rikers Island while you're waiting to be tried.
That's a very good way of putting it. It's basically a walk through the front end of the American justice system. And I really like what you said about the first episode. I hadn't thought about that because I had exactly the same response to the first episode. And ultimately, I didn't quite enjoy the rest of it as much as I thought I would after the first episode.
The first episode is essentially about 67 minutes of non-stop suspense.
Yes.
As you watch the character played by Riz Ahmed make one mistake after another, after another, after another, and with some brilliant music, incredible camera work, amazing editing, and you're just like, something terrible is going to happen to this kid, and it does.
And I think it very cleverly sort of wolf whistles in your ear that this character, the Riz Ahmed character, is leaving behind this catastrophic trail behind him.
Yes.
And there are clearly very large sections of the evening that we do not see in the first series that are pivotal to the rest of the series. So I'm with you. I really, really, really loved the first episode. I really loved all of the cast. My biggest issue is the transition that happens with Riz Ahmed's character throughout the series. I don't buy it.
Okay, so Riz Ahmed goes to Rikers Island, and while he's there, he becomes prison hard.
He basically turns into Avon Barksdale.
Yes, he becomes prison hard in terms of muscles, he shaves his head, he hooks up with the guy who runs the joint, played by Michael Kenneth Williams. He gets the tats, and he becomes prison hard, which doesn't help him when he goes to trial, because he goes from being a really sweet-looking young man to a very hard-looking young man.
Yes, and at the beginning of the series, he's this very gentle, likeable Pakistani American,
which is what
this is the central premise. This is how he's represented and portrayed to us. That transformation is to, I think, very much push forward the agenda of the writers in this series,
which is the transitional prison fucks you up even while
the
you're
way that people
waiting.
Absolutely, the way that people are brutalised
Yeah.
in the front end of the American criminal justice system,
Yeah.
and I'm all for depicting that. I just think that the dramatic device that they use with the Riz Ahmed character for that doesn't work, and I didn't buy it.
They are deliberately making us believe he is, that butter wouldn't melt in his mouth at the beginning, and then you gradually realise that he is not perfect and that he is indeed
like all of us,
you know,
and he's all shades of grey, and you start to doubt your initial depiction. You know, after the first episode, I was all expecting to kind of put this in my faves of the year in my kind of top 5. It didn't quite make the cut. I just think there's such a blind spot with that transition.
The night of, I say definitely watch it. Jim, up there.
Terms up.
You don't have to talk to me unless you want to.
You need to understand what happened here.
Things just got out of hand.
Thanks for watching Watch This. Next week, Jim will join me to take apart my favourite films of 2016.
Watch that, watch this, and I'll die.